Tonight, we walk a corridor that smells of dust and candle wax. Marks in the stone follow us like quiet eyes, and the air hums with patterns you almost remember. Nothing shouts here, only whispers that do not fade. We begin inside a locked room, where light falls in thin lines across old pages. No speeches, no drama, just you, the hush of paper, and signs that look simple until you stare. A circle nested in a square, a cross stitched with 7 dots, margins filled with tiny hands pointing at words that were changed, then changed back. This book moves through those marks. We keep the pace slow and the lens steady. We look at symbols carved into walls you were never meant to read, and codes tucked between prayers. We trace why a shape repeats across centuries, why a number returns, why a flower in stained glass hides a calendar for the moon. We do not force answers. We let the signs speak, then follow where they lead. You will see how monks use geometry to map ideas they could not write in plain sight, how colours in a fresco act like keys, how choir steps count to a pattern that opens a date. You will learn to read with your eyes, your fingers, and your breath. Simple tools, quiet questions, clear steps. Each chapter offers a sign, a small method, and a short practice. You will mark, measure, and test. You will learn to spot noise and when to walk on. You will hear silence as a signal. You will learn the difference between legend and hint, copy and code, fear and caution. This is not a fight with faith. It is a walk with craft. We honour the hands that wrote, painted, carved, and kept. We honour what was hidden to protect, not to deceive. The vaults keep many things. Some are priceless, some are warnings. All are lessons in how power travels in plain sight if you know how to see. The first time you notice it, it feels like a trick of the eye. A finger drawn into the parchment itself, inked in black or red, sometimes tipped with a sleeve. At first it seems childish, the sort of doodle left by a bored scribe passing the time in silence. But then you look closer. The hand is not random. Its finger points, precise as an arrow, toward a word, a phrase, sometimes a single letter hidden among hundreds. The shape is simple, but the act is deliberate. You are looking at the manicule, the little hand that monks and scholars drew for each other when the truth had to be hidden in plain sight. The manicule is no invention of idle play. It is a signal. When a reader centuries ago wanted to say, "This line matters, do not forget it. This is the hinge," he drew a hand. These hands became a code, a quiet language layered on top of the holy text itself. Every one you see is like a lock. Every one carries a key. Imagine a monk alone in a cell, candlelight low, copying text word by word. He cannot change the words. That would be heresy. But he can bend the margin. He can make his own trail for another reader to follow. The little hand is his whisper. The gesture says, "Do not trust the surface. Look here. The truth waits underneath." Some manicules are elegant, with long fingernails and flowing cuffs. Others are simple lines, rough, almost desperate. But their aim is the same. They point to parts of the book that mattered more than others, places where law, calendar, and secret teaching blurred. Over time, you begin to see them not as notes, but as a secret dialogue running along the edges of holy words. What they point to varies. Sometimes it is a single word that seems ordinary, but count the letters, and you will see it repeats across chapters. Sometimes the hand gestures toward a number, and then you see the number is not the verse at all, but a date or a tally. Scholars who studied these drawings with microscopes discovered oils from centuries of human touch. Fingers followed fingers, eyes followed lines. It is almost as though the page itself has memory, storing the moments when the code was seen, read, and passed forward. The manicule is the simplest key, no complex cipher, no heavy lock. It is a reminder that the real code is not always in symbols strange to the eye. Sometimes it is in something you already know, twisted just enough to become secret. When you read, slow down, trace the fingers with your own. Ask why the hand points to this word and not the one beside it. Notice if more than one appears. Are they drawing a path across the page? Are they directing you to the start of a new section or the echo of an old one? In the margin, meaning bends. It is said that in certain Bibles kept in the Vatican's own collection, hands march through the margins like pilgrims. They point, guide, argue, contradict. And together they form a second book, one only the attentive will ever see, the book beside the book, the silent code left in plain view. A circle inside a square. You have seen it in art, in stone floors, in stained glass windows, where light bends through geometry. It seems decorative, like pattern for beauty's sake, but no line in these places is drawn without purpose. The circle within the square is a code, a bridge between two worlds. The square belongs to the earth. 4 sides, 4 corners, 4 winds, 4 rivers, 4 elements. The circle belongs to heaven. No start, no end, no break in its flow. When they touch, when the circle is set within the square, what you are looking at is the meeting of earth and heaven, the balance between body and soul, the known and the infinite. Scribes drew this shape into margins with simple compass tools. Builders carved it into stone floors. Monks stitched it into vestments. Always the meaning ran deeper than decoration. It was a reminder that beneath the prayers and rules lived a hidden architecture, the order of creation itself. Inside the Vatican's vaults are manuscripts where this shape repeats over and over, sometimes with numbers tucked in the quadrants, sometimes with tiny symbols marked along the rim. Count them and you find 7, or 12, or 24, the days of the week, the months of the year, the hours of the day. Each circle inside square becomes a calendar, a cosmic clock written in shape alone. Imagine standing in a chapel at dawn. The sun rises and the light falls directly onto a tiled floor. The design under your feet is a square crossed by a circle. You stand in the center and realize you are part of the code. Your shadow aligns with the day, the season, the feast. Without words, without speech, the room teaches. Why hide this? Because geometry crosses boundaries. A shape is not bound by language. A circle is the same in Greek, Latin, or Hebrew. To draw it is to say more than one thing at once. To hide knowledge inside, symbol is to guard it from the eyes of those who cannot read it, while making it clear to those who can. Many who walked the corridors of power feared geometry, not because it was wrong, but because it was too wide, too open, too universal. They feared what cannot be contained by borders, what does not kneel to words. And so these shapes were tucked into margins, hidden in decoration, left where only the patient eye would see. The next time you find the circle and the square together, ask, what number sits between them? What light falls across them? What story unfolds in silence between the two? The circle whispers of heaven, the square whispers of earth. Together they speak of balance, of order, of a truth that lives beyond words. This is the code of circles, plain to see, yet hidden all the same. It is small, easy to miss. 7 dots drawn like beads on a line, often forming a cross, sometimes placed in the margin, sometimes hidden in an initial letter. They look like decoration, like dust. But 7 is never random. 7 days of creation, 7 planets that guided ancient calendars, 7 steps in the path from earth to sky. Each dot is more than ink. Together they are a code that maps time itself. The cross of 7 appears across texts and walls alike. In one manuscript it rests inside a capital letter, pointing to a passage on judgment. In another it sits quietly at the end of a psalm, where a prayer closes and another begins. To the untrained eye, it is nothing. To the reader who counts, It is a calendar carved in miniature. Some say the Vatican's copy of the Book of Hours carries dozens of these signs, not in the main prayers, but in the spaces between. 7 dots mark the rhythm of days. They guide when to fast, when to feast, when to remain silent. They are a system simple enough to hide in the open, strong enough to last centuries. Think of a monk tracing them with his finger in candlelight. He does not need words. He knows the order by touch. 7 points, then repeat. The rhythm of the sky embedded in ink. Why hide such a simple sign? Because time is power. Whoever sets the calendar sets the feast. Whoever marks the day controls the rhythm of prayer, labour, rest. To know the pattern beneath the public calendar was to hold a second, secret one. And that second calendar might not always match what was declared. 7 dots, drawn as cross, remind you that code does not need complexity. The strongest symbols are small, repeatable, and subtle. They are woven into the fabric of the page until they seem natural, inevitable. But once you see them, you cannot unsee them. They are a drumbeat beneath the silence. When you find the 7, pause, count them. Ask what they stand beside. A feast, a law, a shift in tone. Ask how the dots connect to each other across chapters, across books. Do they form a rhythm? Do they carry a hidden chain of days? In the quiet halls where these signs remain, the 7 still hum. They hum with the memory of monks who counted. They hum with the passage of time itself. A cross of dots, small as seeds, carries the weight of calendars, planets, and prayers. It is code in its purest form, silent, simple, unbroken. You will not see them at first glance. The page looks clean, the art crisp, the words evenly placed. But tilt the parchment to the light and a faint lattice emerges. Thin lines, drawn in pencil or lead, vanish into the fibres of the page. They were not meant to be noticed, yet without them, the entire manuscript would collapse. These are the hidden grids, the bones of the page, the structure under the surface. And more than simple guides, they are codes. Every scribe began with a blank sheet, daunting as silence. To tame it, he ruled it. Lines to steady the hand, margins to contain the words, squares to hold the art. But some grids were more than rulers. They carried meaning of their own. Imagine a page divided not only for beauty, but for number, for rhythm, for symbol. A psalm spread across 7 ruled spaces, each line mapping to a day. A prayer written within 12 squares, each one echoing a month. A grid could hide a calendar inside Scripture, visible only to those who measured. In certain illuminated Bibles, researchers discovered underdrawings invisible until raking light revealed them. Circles drawn inside squares, crosses aligned not with text but with solstice and equinox. The grid was not just a framework for art. It was a quiet mirror of the cosmos. To read these manuscripts with only your eyes is to miss half the message. To read them with light, angle, and patience is to see the secret order. Grids whisper of control, of a hidden hand shaping what appears free. To the casual reader, the text flows, the art blooms. But to the one who measures, every letter falls into a pattern, every figure into proportion. The hidden grid becomes a net-catching meaning. Think of the Vatican Library. Thousands of pages stored in vaults, their surfaces gleaming with paint and gold. Yet beneath those surfaces lies another world, faint lines, erased but not gone, guiding the text like rails under a train. The code is not in the words themselves, but in the space between them. The meaning of a grid changes with the eye that sees it. To one scribe, it was a tool for neatness. To another, it was a shield, hiding symbols in plain geometry. To us, centuries later, it is a window into intention. Why is one column narrower than another? Why do certain images align exactly with invisible lines? Why is one square empty when all others are filled? A hidden grid is a reminder that what we see is never the whole. Beneath every surface lies order. Beneath every page lies a map, and those maps carry more than guides for the hand. They carry the quiet codes of belief, fear, and hope lines etched to keep meaning safe from eyes that could not be trusted. Gold flickers in candlelight, drawing your gaze to one word. Red catches your eye in the margin. Blue pools deep in the shape of a letter. At first you think it is decoration, meant only for beauty. But colour is never innocent here. It is a key. Scribes chose pigments with care. Red ink marked not only headings, but corrections, signals to the careful reader that something had changed. Gold did more than gleam. It sanctified a phrase, making it radiant with divine authority. Blue was rare, drawn from costly lapis stone, reserved for secrecy and depth. Each hue was a sign, telling you how to read, where to pause, what to believe. Colour became a code layered over words. A phrase in red could mean danger, emphasis, or silence. A word in gold could mean truth beyond question, or a power too great to speak plainly. When you walk through certain chapels, you will see this system at work, not on parchment, but in glass. Red windows flood a space with warning. Blue windows sink it into reflection. Gold halos crown not only saints, but ideas. Imagine holding a medieval book in your hands. By candlelight, your eyes are drawn not to the black text, but to the red marks, the golden highlights. Your reading is guided, your thoughts bent, your focus shaped by colour. You are being told not only what to read, but how to read. The Vatican holds manuscripts where patterns of colour form maps of meaning. Red marks every third line, counting silently. Gold circles reappear at turning points, marking cycles. Blue flourishes cluster in certain prayers, guiding the reader to nights of vigil. To the untrained, it looks random. To the trained, it is a sequence, a thread, a code. Why hide meaning in colour? Because words can be argued, words can be erased, but a colour, chosen carefully, bypasses reason. It works on the senses, on the mind beneath the mind. It tells you how to feel before you even know why. It writes itself into memory faster than letters. In certain forbidden texts, the red is not correction, but invitation, a cue to read between the lines. In others, the gold signals not holiness, but danger. Do not change this line. It belongs to power. To read colour is to read authority. To understand it is to know who guided the hand, who set the limits, who decided which truths would glow and which would fade into black. The next time you see red, blue, gold, pause. Ask why here, why now, why this word. Remember, the code does not always live in letters. Sometimes it shines in pigment, quiet but commanding, pulling your eyes to secrets you were never meant to miss. Walk into a cathedral and count the steps from door to altar, count the pillars that hold the roof, count the windows, the arches, the seats. You will begin to see a pattern. The numbers are not random, they are messages carved in stone. Numbers were language before words. Builders used them to signal what could not be spoken. 12 pillars for the apostles, 7 steps to the choir, 3 arches over the nave. These are not only symbols but codes, mathematics written into architecture. To walk the church is to read the numbers with your feet. In Rome, Florence and Seville, you find the same rhythm. Chapels built miles apart, yet they carry matching counts. 24 windows for the hours of the day. 52 carvings for the weeks of the year. 365 tiles in a mosaic floor. The church becomes a calendar you can walk, a clock you can circle, a book you can enter. Why hide codes in stone? Because stone endures. Paint fades, parchment crumbles, but numbers cut into walls remain. They speak across centuries, long after voices fall silent. The Vatican itself is layered with these codes. Corridors count paces. Courtyards balance sides. Steps lead in 7s or 10s, marking cycles, guiding the body as much as the soul. A pilgrim may think he is walking in silence, but his body is counting. He climbs 12 stairs, kneels 3 times, passes through 4 arches. Without knowing, he has rehearsed a code older than words. The secret lies not only in the obvious counts, but in the absences. A missing column, a skipped step, a pattern broken once. These breaks are where the code shifts, where meaning hides. Ask why there are 11 instead of 12. Ask why one side holds 6, the other 7. These are the whispers of those who built with purpose, who carved belief into stone. Numbers in stone are not accidents. They are instructions. They tell you how to move, when to pause, how to pray. They shape not only your body, but your mind. To walk in rhythm with them is to join the code. In the end, the cathedral is not only a house of prayer, but a book of numbers. Each pillar a word, each arch a line, each step a verse. The faithful walked it without knowing. The wise walked it with eyes open. And those who counted learned to read the secret mathematics of stone, where the code still waits, silent, patient, unbroken. It is easy to think of the cross as a single image. Two beams of wood meeting at right angles, the most familiar sign in the Christian world. Yet, look carefully at manuscripts, stone carvings, and stained glass, and you will find that no two crosses are ever quite the same. They change length, ratio, decoration. Some bear circles, others dots, others strange additions at the edges. These differences were not mere style, they were codes. The cross, as symbol, is flexible, capable of carrying more than devotion. It became a quiet language of numbers, dates, and warnings. A cross with equal arms, for example, whispers balance, 4 directions, 4 elements. A cross with a longer stem points downward, grounding itself in earth. A cross made of dots instead of lines whispers a calendar. 7 dots in the shape of a cross count the days, the planets, the steps between worlds. In hidden manuscripts, you will find crosses that appear where no prayer begins, no blessing ends. They seem to float in margins or lurk between words. They are markers, not decorations. Each one a beacon, each one a signpost, pointing the trained eye towards something left unsaid. Sometimes the cross signals a hidden name. Other times it signals caution. Tread lightly here. The meaning is layered. The surface is not the whole. In certain Bibles preserved in the Vatican, scholars discovered entire chains of crosses drawn faintly across pages. When connected, they form a map, leading not through scripture, but around it, circling passages, highlighting omissions, marking patterns invisible without patience. It is as if someone centuries ago whispered, "The truth is not in the center of the page, but in what these crosses encircle." The cross also served as a veil. When a line was too dangerous to write outright, a cross in the margin could carry the weight. The reader knew, this word means more than it says. The cross beside it marks the deeper reading, one sign to protect both scribe and reader from suspicion. Think of the pilgrim who enters a chapel and finds a cross carved into the lintel. To the casual visitor, it is reverence. To the careful one, it may be a code. How many petals surround it? How many steps lead to it? What number does it mark? In Florence, a chapel with 12 crosses was built not to honour the apostles, but to count the months of the year. In Spain, a set of 4 crosses aligned perfectly with equinox and solstice light. To stand at the right hour was to see the code unlocked by sun itself. The Vatican vaults hold countless variations of this shape, some simple, some ornate, some hidden. Each cross is both symbol and cipher, devotion and code. To read them is not to deny faith, but to recognize its layered depth. The cross is never only what it seems. It is a key, placed quietly where all can see, yet understood by few. Run your finger along the borders of a medieval page. At first, you see vines, leaves, flowers curling in decoration. But pause, trace again. The vines turn to ropes, the ropes twist into knots, the knots close into loops. Suddenly, you realize you are not looking at plants at all, but at a code line's weaving meaning through pattern. Knots and ropes in margins, carved into stone, woven into vestments, are more than ornament. They bind themes together. They link words to words, chapters to chapters, readers to readers. A knot is a tie. What happens here is bound to what happens there. Follow the line and you will find the secret connection. Some knots are simple, looping once or twice around a letter. Others are elaborate, weaving in and out like a puzzle. To the casual eye, they are decoration. To the trained, they are trails. One knot repeated 3 times signals a trinity. A rope that splits into 7 strands signals the days of the week. An endless knot, with no start or end, whispers of eternity, of truths that cannot be undone. In certain illuminated manuscripts, knots form borders around forbidden passages. They appear to contain the words, but in truth they point outward. Each twist corresponds to a letter. Count the loops, and you find numbers. Trace the overlaps, and you reveal shapes, circles, crosses, even stars hidden in plain sight. Builders carved these knots into cloisters and chapels, stone ropes twisting through arches. Pilgrims walked past them daily, unaware. But to initiates, the pattern spoke. A rope carved with 13 twists marked the lunar year. A knot of 5 loops whispered of Venus, her cycle hidden in stone. The Vatican holds vestments, embroidered with knots so fine they look like lace. Each knot a prayer, each loop a letter. To wear them was to carry a code on one's body, a secret shield woven into cloth. Only the one who knew the pattern could read it. Why hide meaning in knots? Because knots endure. They are simple, repeatable, unremarkable. They draw no suspicion, yet they hold infinite variety. They can be copied without error, passed from hand to hand, page to page, wall to wall. And they are resilient. A knot holds. It does not slip unless you wish it. The next time you see a border of vines, do not assume decoration. Count the loops, trace the crossings. Ask if the rope ties something invisible. Remember, the code is not always in words. Sometimes it is in the knot, holding secrets in silence, waiting for patient hands to untie. 3 candles lit on an altar. 3 steps up to a choir. 3 words repeated in a chant. The pattern is so common it seems natural, inevitable. But in the hidden codes of manuscripts and stone, the rule of 3 is not accident. It is deliberate, and it carries weight. 3 is balance. 2 pulls in opposite directions. 3 resolves the tension. In theology, it is the Trinity. In ritual, it is repetition that seals intent. In code, it is the marker of hierarchy, oath, or source. When you see 3, you are meant to pause. You are meant to understand that something more than surface is being shown. Scribes hid their truths in sets of 3. 3 dots in a margin to mark a passage. 3 crosses in sequence to signal caution. 3 words abbreviated, their letters forming a second message. Each trio was both ordinary and extraordinary, familiar enough to pass unnoticed, deliberate enough to guide those who knew. Consider the manuscripts where every 3rd line carries a red mark. To the casual reader, it is rhythm. To the trained one, it is counting. 3 lines form a unit. 3 units form 9. 9 folds back into 3. The structure itself becomes code, guiding not only how the words are read, but how they are felt. In certain cathedrals, architects built the rule of 3 into stone. 3 arches open into 3 doors. 3 towers stand above. To the pilgrim, it is symmetry. To the code reader, it is instruction. Look deeper, count, align. A triple doorway may mark a triad of feasts, a triad of warnings, a triad of truths never written. Why 3? Because it is the smallest number that creates a system. 1 stands alone. 2 is opposition. 3 is harmony, movement, life. It is also easy to hide. No one questions 3 candles, 3 arches, 3 chants, yet each one can carry meaning beyond surface. The Vatican vaults preserve psalters where 3 symbols repeat again and again. Some scholars say they mark songs meant only for certain nights. Others whisper they signal forbidden teachings, preserved through rhythm rather than words. Whatever their purpose, the triads endure, weaving meaning through centuries. When you see 3, ask, why not 2? Why not 4? Ask what the 3 bind together. Is it past, present, future, body, soul, spirit, heaven, earth, underworld? The answer will shift, but the code remains. The rule of 3 whispers everywhere, in candles, in steps, in words, in symbols. To see it is to glimpse the hidden architecture beneath devotion. 3 is not random. It is a key, a signature, a seal. It is the quiet code of completion, drawn so often that it disappears, yet always waiting for those who will count, who will listen, who will follow the pattern to its source. When a scribe worked by hand, the act of repetition was both necessity and choice. Mistakes slipped in, letters wavered, phrases repeated by accident. Yet in the manuscripts hidden in the Vatican vaults, there are lines that repeat too perfectly, too deliberately to be error. These are the echo lines, the quiet doubling of words, the deliberate reappearance of phrases meant to form a pattern invisible to the casual eye. To read an echo line is to hear a whisper inside a whisper. The first voice is plain, the surface meaning. The second voice lingers, repeating, calling your attention. Why say it again? Why now? Why in this rhythm? The answer is that the echo is not for devotion alone. It is code. A psalm may say, "The Lord is my light." Then 3 lines later, the exact words appear again, same letters, same order. The repetition is not needed for poetry, it is needed for signal. To the trained eye, the echo marks a boundary. Here begins a hidden section. Or it points to a number. Count the words between the echoes, and you will find 7, or 12, or 33. The numbers themselves are messages, mapping days, feasts, or secrets too dangerous to write openly. In medieval commentaries, entire sentences echo across different books. You turn from one manuscript to another, and the same line greets you. How could this happen in an age without printing, when no 2 books were alike? The answer lies in intent. Scribes copied the echo deliberately, passing it like a torch. The line itself became a secret handshake, a way of saying, you are not alone, someone else has read as you do. The walls of cathedrals carry echo lines too. In Florence, the phrase Deus lux mea appears twice, in 2 separate arches, with a space of 7 windows between. The repetition creates a map of light. On the solstice, the sun falls first on one echo, then on the other, joining them in a rhythm of shadow and shine. To stand there is to be part of a hidden conversation between stone, sun, and time. Why hide meaning in echoes? Because they are subtle. Words repeat in every book. A scribe can always say, it was accident, it was style, it was the rhythm of prayer. Yet beneath that excuse lies intention. Repetition can be the safest mask and the most reliable code. Modern scholars have counted echo lines across collections. They found patterns, 7 words between, or 40 days, or 365 lines. Each set mirrors the cycle of time, week, season, year. Each echo line becomes a calendar, a drumbeat beneath the prayer. The Vatican holds manuscripts where echoes form entire chains. A phrase repeats not once, but across dozens of pages, marking hidden commentary that was never written in the open. If you know the first phrase, you can trace its echoes like stepping stones across a river. They lead you from margin to margin, book to book, meaning to meaning. Without them, you drift. With them, you follow a path invisible to the untrained. The echo is not only in words but in sound. Chants repeat lines not just for devotion but for memory. The repeated phrase anchors the listener, guides them through cycles. To those who listened with sharper ears, the echo marked more than worship. It was a signal. When you hear the line again, turn inward, recall the teaching, guard the knowledge. The Code of Echoes reminds us that silence is not the only cloak. Repetition can hide as well as erase. To read truly, one must ask, why does this line appear again? Why is the echo placed here, not elsewhere? What number lies between? The echo line is not accident. It is anchor, boundary, key. In repetition lies instruction, passed across centuries like a rhythm that will not fade, a sound that keeps returning, calling your attention, insisting you see what lies beneath the surface of prayer. In libraries where books were chained to shelves, finding the right page was slow, difficult, precious. The printed index had not yet been born. Instead, scribes built secret indexes into the books themselves. Quiet systems of navigation meant only for those who knew. These hidden indexes took many forms: pinpricks in the parchment, faint slits in the edge of a page, thumb stains rubbed into corners. Each one was a signal: stop here, begin here, return here. To the untrained eye, the pinhole is nothing. A flaw in the parchment, a tear, a stain. But count them carefully, and you will see they form a system. 1 hole for chapter 1, 2 for chapter 2, 3 for chapter 3. Slip your finger into the gap, and the book opens exactly where the scribe intended. The reader need not waste time flipping. The hidden index leads directly to the coded passage. In some manuscripts, these pinholes were not at the edges, but in the body of the page. A faint dot beside a phrase marks it as crucial. A line of tiny slits runs across the margin, guiding you to a cluster of words that otherwise look ordinary. These are not mistakes. They are bookmarks carved in flesh and ink. Imagine a monk bent over his Bible at night, candle guttering, eyes heavy. He does not have time to scan the whole book. He runs his thumb along the edge and feels for the notch. The book falls open, and there it is, the passage he needs, the one that matters. That is the hidden index at work. The Vatican's collection holds manuscripts where indexes are entire systems in themselves. Pinholes lead not to chapters, but to cycles of time. 12 holes in sequence mark the months. 7 holes repeat for the days of the week. To the unknowing, the marks are random. To the initiate, the book itself becomes a calendar, a guide to ritual, a secret clock. Sometimes the hidden index marks danger. A notch may signal, beware. Here the words are dangerous. Here the surface is not safe. Read with caution. Inquisitors flipping through such a book would see only dust and wear, but the reader, trained in touch, would feel the warning beneath their fingers. Why use hidden indexes? Because knowledge needed to move silently. Not all truth could be written in bold lines. Not all readers could be trusted. The index allowed one reader to find the next reader across centuries. The code of touch replaced the code of word. Think of this the next time you hold a book. Look at its edges. Run your finger along the side. Ask if the page wears more in one place than another. Ask if the margins hold faint slits, tiny dots, light marks that seem too deliberate to be chance. Books are not only read with eyes, they are read with fingers. And fingers remember where eyes are not meant to look. The hidden index is a reminder that guidance often lies in silence. You are not told where to go. You are shown by touch, by mark, by absence. It is navigation in shadow, direction given through the smallest gestures. A book that looks plain may hold an entire map, invisible until you know how to search. In the vaults of the Vatican, books whisper not only through their words, but through their scars. The slits, the pinholes, the stains, they are voices pointing the way, voices of readers long gone. To follow them is to join a chain of seekers stretching back centuries, each one guided by the same quiet system, each one trusting the same hidden index. On the page, a right angle, Two lines meeting at 90 degrees, sharp, exact. On stone, the same. A corner carved clean, a measure checked against a square. At first it seems practical, neatness, precision, discipline. Yet in the hidden codes of manuscripts and buildings, the right angle was more than utility. It was trust. Geometry shapes how we believe. A line drawn straight inspires confidence. A corner square promises order. In an age where chaos ruled outside the walls, the scribe and the builder used geometry as assurance. This is true, this is solid, this will not fall. To place a right angle in a sacred context was to say, you may rest here, this corner is secure. But there was more. The right angle marked turning points. In manuscripts, lines shifted direction at the angle, moving text into a new column or section. Where the angle appears, meaning pivots. Something has ended, something new begins, a code, silent but sure. In cathedrals, right angles control the flow of bodies. A pilgrim walks straight, then must turn. The turn is not random. It guides the feet, directs the gaze, forces attention. The path itself becomes teaching. You cannot move forever in a straight line. You must turn, and when you turn, you change. The angle itself becomes instruction. The Vatican preserves pages where geometry rules all. Margins laid with squares, text aligned to compass points, decorations bending to grids. The right angle appears again and again, quiet, steady, firm. Scholars who measured found that these angles often mark sacred numbers. 90 degrees mirrors the quadrant of the heavens. 4 right angles form a square, the earth. Place a circle inside, and you have heaven and earth meeting. The right angle is code because it is universal. No language barrier can hide it. No translation alters it. A 90-degree turn is 90 everywhere. To draw, it was to send a message across borders, across centuries. This truth holds. It cannot be bent. It cannot be broken. Trust was vital in those years. Not every text was safe. Not every word could be read openly. But the right angle said, here you may lean, here the meaning is stable. It was a scribe's way of saying, believe this line. A builder's way of saying, this wall will not fail. In some manuscripts, right angles appear where they do not belong. In the margins, drawn faintly, connecting words across the page, follow the angle and you find a hidden connection, a phrase linked to another. The angle becomes a bridge, a code of relation invisible unless traced. Why geometry? Because numbers and shapes whisper where words shout. They slip past guards, past censors, past suspicion. A right angle is always just a corner, unless you know how to see. Then it becomes a code, a signal, a promise. When you next see a square corner in a manuscript, a sharp angle in a fresco, a turn in a cathedral hallway, pause. Ask why this turn, why this angle, why now? Trust that what meets at 90 is more than line. It is meaning itself, bent into shape, waiting for you to see the pattern. In the hidden codes of the Vatican, the right angle is not decoration, not accident. It is a sign of stability, a mark of authority, a silent assurance. It is geometry as faith, geometry as code, geometry as trust. There is a moment when the page looks like it speaks in one tongue, but whispers in another. You trace the letters, you read the words, but something does not fit. A phrase repeats oddly. A letter appears oversized. A column bends just slightly out of line, and then it dawns on you, the alphabet you think you know is not the alphabet being used. You are looking at a quiet alphabet, a system where letters themselves carry numbers, where words are chosen not for meaning but for code. Every language has its order, its sequence, its rules. In the hands of the scribes, these rules became tools. The Latin alphabet, plain as it looks, became a cipher. A simple shift move each letter by 1 or 3 or 5, and an entirely new message appears beneath the surface. What looks like devotion hides warning. what looks like prayer hides instruction. This shifting of letters, what some would later call substitution, was no game, it was survival. To write openly was to risk accusation. To code quietly was to pass meaning safely, to leave a signal that could only be read by the one who held the key. A psalm might carry not just praise but also a date, encoded in the letters. A margin note might look like random scrawl, but count the alphabet forward or backward and a name emerges. The quiet alphabet lived not only in substitution but in position. Letters were placed deliberately in columns and rows. A word at the start of each line forms an acrostic. Read downward, not across, and a hidden sentence emerges. In some manuscripts, the initials of prayers form entire secret texts. Names of patrons, warnings of danger, even critiques of those in power. To the casual reader, they are simply decorative initials. To the trained, they are messages left in plain sight. The Vatican vaults preserve psalters, where every page begins with a large letter painted in gold or blue. Alone, they seem like ornament, but line them up, page after page, and they spell a phrase entirely separate from the prayers, a second book inside the book, a voice behind the voice. This alphabetic coding extended into numbers. Each letter carried a numerical value, A as 1, B as 2, and so on. Add the letters of a word, and you arrive at a number. That number may match a date, a chapter, a hidden reference. In Hebrew and Greek texts, this system was more deliberate, but Latin scribes borrowed it quietly. They would mark a passage with a single letter, knowing the reader would add it into the larger sum. Numbers hidden in letters became calendars, coordinates, maps of feasts and fasts. The quiet alphabet also appeared in geometry. Place letters on a grid, and they form patterns. A word shifted along a square reveals a second meaning. Certain manuscripts reveal faint pencil lines under the text, grids where letters fall not randomly but at precise points. Trace them, and you find shapes, a cross, a star, a circle. The alphabet becomes not just text, but drawing, code transformed into art. Why use the alphabet this way? Because it is universal. Every reader knows letters. No reader suspects them. The alphabet is the safest mask, invisible, ordinary, unremarkable. And yet, when shifted, counted, aligned, it speaks more loudly than any open word could. When you next see a page, ask, why this letter enlarged? Why this phrase repeated? Why this initial gilded when the others are not? Do not trust the surface. Count, shift, align. Remember that every alphabet carries not only words but numbers, shapes, codes. The quiet alphabet is always there, waiting to be read, not with eyes alone, but with patience, with touch, with trust in hidden order. The book in front of you may hold two alphabets, the one you think you see and the one whispering behind it. The key is not far. The key is already in your hand. A parchment is never truly blank. Scrape the surface, wash the ink, stretch it again, and still the ghost of words remains. These are palimpsests, manuscripts, written over older manuscripts, new words layered atop erased ones. And if you tilt them to the light, if you breathe gently on their skin, the old words rise again. They whisper. They wait. The Vatican holds thousands of these hidden books. Monks reused parchment because calfskin was precious, but they chose carefully what to erase. The texts scraped away were often the most dangerous, teachings declared heretical, gospels banned, commentaries deemed too sharp. But erasure is never perfect. The old text lingers like memory. And for those who know how to see, the ghost speaks louder than the ink above it. A palimpsest is a battlefield of meaning. On the surface, you see one voice, sanctioned, permitted. Beneath it lies another, silenced but unyielding. Two layers of history pressed together, a dialogue across centuries. Read the surface, and you hear obedience. Read the ghost, and you hear resistance. Scholars, in recent decades, used ultraviolet light to make these ghosts glow. But long before machines, scribes themselves knew how to read them. A candle held low reveals faint strokes. A page tilted at dawn shows outlines. Even the breath of a reader, moistening the surface, can make letters swell, just enough to glimpse. The code was not only in the ink, but in the ghost of what refused to be erased. Imagine holding a psalter in your hands. The surface speaks of daily prayers. Yet beneath, faint but insistent, runs a different gospel, words banned by council centuries ago. You are not reading one book but two, one written to be seen, the other buried to be forgotten. Yet the buried survives, stubborn as bone. Why is this code so powerful? Because it depends not on addition but on absence. It is not something written deliberately as secret. It is something erased and yet unwilling to die. The whisper of the palimpsest is the whisper of memory itself. What was silenced still breathes. In some manuscripts, the lower text was deliberately chosen to speak. Scribes used erasure as camouflage. They would overwrite a common prayer, but place it directly atop a forbidden teaching, knowing that the careful reader could find both. The book becomes double-voiced, one message for the authorities, one for the initiate. Palimpsests also appeared in stone. Walls were scraped, inscriptions smoothed and recarved. Yet the old letters, faint but present, bleed through. Cathedrals whisper with these ghosts. Names of patrons erased, dates altered, symbols buried beneath new plaster. To walk through these halls is to walk through layers of speech, each one pressed atop another, none fully gone. To read a palimpsest is to honour resilience. The code is not in the clarity, but in the persistence. What was meant to vanish remains. What was declared unworthy becomes eternal by accident. The next time you hold a page, tilt it. Look at the shadows beneath. Ask what came before, what voice is buried there. Trust that the parchment remembers, even when the scribe tried to make it forget. The whisper of the palimpsest is the whisper of truth. You may silence me, but you will never erase me. There are labyrinths you walk with your feet, paths carved in stone on cathedral floors. And there are labyrinths you walk with your finger, spirals drawn small in the margins of manuscripts. These are finger labyrinths, tiny mazes for private devotion, quiet codes, guiding thought where words could not. On a page filled with text, you find a spiral doodle. At first it looks like play, idle decoration by a bored scribe. But follow it carefully. The path does not wander aimlessly. It coils inward, then out, always one line, always leading to a centre and then away. To trace it with your finger is to travel, to move in silence across a symbolic landscape. The labyrinth is code because it teaches without speech. It maps a journey. Outward life, inward reflection, return. To walk it with your hand is to meditate, to pray in motion. In secret, it also signalled instruction. A labyrinth with 7 coils mirrored the 7 days. With 12, the 12 months. With 13, the lunar year. Each spiral was not only art but calendar. In cathedrals, vast labyrinths stretched across floors. Pilgrims walked them as substitute for holy journeys they could not afford. In books, the labyrinth shrank to palm size, but its meaning remained. The page became a pilgrimage. To follow the spiral was to practice journey, to carry the code of movement wherever you went. Some labyrinths were more complex. Hidden turns, false centres, mirrored paths. They were not meant for comfort, but for trial. The reader who traced them learned patience, persistence, trust. In some, initials marked certain turns, letters that, when gathered, spelled hidden words. The labyrinth became not only a map of prayer, but a puzzle of code. The Vatican holds manuscripts where labyrinths are drawn faintly in margins, often near psalms of lament or joy. Their presence is never explained. They sit silently, waiting for the touch of a finger. The labyrinth is not meant to be seen, but to be felt. Its code lives in movement, not in ink. Why hide meaning in labyrinths? Because the labyrinth itself is mask and message. To those who do not trace it, it is doodle. To those who do, it is journey. It separates casual eyes from patient hands. Only the one who lingers, who touches, who repeats, will discover the teaching. The labyrinth is both prayer and code, both path and cipher. It whispers, all journeys fold inward before they unfold outward. It reminds, the center is not the end, but the place where meaning shifts. It teaches, truth is not reached by straight lines, but by patient spirals. When you next see a spiral in a margin, resist the urge to dismiss it. Place your finger at its edge, follow its winding line. Feel how it draws you inward, how it releases you outward. Trust that the code is not in what you see, but in what you do. The labyrinth is not decoration, it is instruction, a pilgrimage of ink, a journey hidden in plain sight, waiting for your hand to walk it. In many cloisters, the stone walls are carved with roses. They blossom in windows of coloured glass, they curl in painted initials, they hide in embroidered vestments. At first they seem harmless flowers for beauty's sake, petals as ornaments for prayer. But the rose was never only decoration, it was code, it was message, it was calendar and map, dressed in bloom. A rose with 5 petals is not simply a flower, it mirrors Venus's cycle through the sky. 5 points traced across 8 years of movement, a hidden pattern of star and planet disguised in petals. A rose with 12 petals marks months, the turning of the year. A rose with 7 signals, the planets, the days, the cycle of creation. Every petal is a count, every thorn a reminder. The flower is not random, it is a cipher dressed in beauty. In manuscripts, roses appear where something crucial is buried in the text. A single rose drawn faintly in the margin might accompany a prayer about resurrection, signalling to the reader that the prayer is tied to Easter's date, a feast determined by lunar cycle. The rose is a marker of timing, a key that says, count not just the words but the days. In certain stained glass windows, roses explode outward in radiant circles. They seem to be art for light and colour, but their symmetry is deliberate. 12 petals for apostles, for months, for tribes, 24 petals for hours, 33 for Christ's years. The rose window is not simply story, it is geometry of devotion, a map of time written in coloured light. The Vatican keeps frescoes where roses climb margins, curling around saints and crosses, yet scholars who counted discovered that the roses were not distributed at random. They fell into sequences, 7 here, 9 there, 11 in another. These numbers matched psalms, feast dates, cycles of fast. The roses were silent guides, directing attention without a word. Why the rose? Because it is both obvious and hidden. A flower raises no suspicion. To the eye untrained, it is beauty, it is ornament. To the reader with patience, it is a system of counts, a network of meaning. The rose carries what the text cannot risk: timing, pattern, secret calendars that survive in petals. The thorn is part of the code too. In some manuscripts, a rose is drawn, but its stem bears exactly 3 thorns, or 5, or 7. These thorns are not decoration, they are marks of warning. 3 for the Trinity, for unity, 5 for wounds, 7 for perfection. Each thorn is a signal to pause, to recognize danger, to remember. The rose is both invitation and caution, beauty that protects itself, message that hides behind veil. When you see a rose in a book or chapel, ask how many petals, how many thorns, how many blooms on a single stem. Ask what feast falls on that number. Ask what cycle begins where the rose appears. Do not trust it as mere ornament. The rose speaks, but only to those who count. The thorned rose is a code that blooms silently, a cipher of beauty that whispers time, truth, and caution. Its petals are more than art. They are calendar, compass, clock. Its thorns are not warning alone, but reminder. What is hidden is meant to be guarded, protected, carried forward in silence, waiting for those who see beyond bloom. In villages, bells marked the rhythm of life. They rang for work, for prayer, for feast, for death. The sound carried across fields, binding people to time. Yet bells were more than sound. They were code. Each toll was a number, each pattern a message. A single toll could call monks to prayer. 3 tolls might summon for mass. 7 tolls, spaced apart, could mark planets, days, creation cycles. To those outside, the bell was only sound. To those inside, the bell was text, voice, signal. In manuscripts, the bell appears as drawing, small and faint, sometimes beside a psalm, sometimes near a chant. It looks like ornament, but its presence means more. This prayer was meant to be accompanied by sound, by rhythm, by code. To read it is to hear it. To hear it is to know the hidden pattern. Cathedrals encoded bells into their architecture. Towers were built to hold sets of bells in specific counts: 3, 5, 7, 12. The numbers mattered as much as the sound. 12 bells for hours, 7 for planets, 3 for unity. The ringing was not just music, but mathematics of devotion, a living code spoken into the air. The Vatican preserved manuscripts, where bell patterns were written as dots or lines, faint beside chants. To an ordinary singer, they looked like marks of rhythm. To the trained, they were instructions. Toll the bell 3 times here, 7 times there. Each toll marked time, not just for the monastery, but for the heavens, aligning sound with planets, cycles, feasts. Why hide meaning in bells? Because sound is fleeting, invisible, untraceable. A bell tolls, and the air carries it, then silence swallows it. To those who do not listen, it vanishes. To those who do, it is code secret signals ringing in plain hearing, disguised as prayer. The silent bell is not silent because it does not sound, but because its meaning is hidden. A villager may hear only tolls. A monk may hear a calendar, a signal, a warning. Bells were used to announce danger, invasion, counsel, secrets. To those who listened, the sequence mattered more than the volume. In some monasteries, the bell rang 13 times on the eve of Easter, matching lunar cycles. In others, the bell rang 9 times at dawn, echoing psalms. They were systems of code, calendars written in air, truth told in sound. To read the bell is to learn patience. You must count, you must remember, you must hear not only the toll, but the silence between. That silence is part of the message. The space holds weight as much as the strike. The Vatican's vaults whisper with bell codes even now. Records of toll patterns, preserved in marginal notes, scribbled as dots, as slashes, as faint lines. They look meaningless. They are maps of time, sound written into silence. When you next hear a bell, pause. Do not only listen, count. Ask why 3, why 5, why 7. Ask what message rides in the air. Remember, the bell speaks, but only to those who know its code. In paintings and mosaics, saints and Christ are shown with hands raised in blessing. The gesture is familiar, fingers lifted, palms open, sometimes forming shapes. To the eye of faith, it is benediction. To the eye of code, it is language. Hands in blessing were not only symbols of devotion, they were signals, codes made of fingers. The hand, with 2 fingers raised, is common. It means blessing, but it also means duality, heaven and earth, divine and human. 3 fingers raised means Trinity, unity in multiplicity. A hand with thumb and 2 fingers together speaks of mystery, hidden knowledge, and code in gesture. These were not random poses chosen by artists. They were systems, passed across paintings, repeated in mosaics, carved into stone. In manuscripts, small drawings of hands appear in margins. At first, they seem like doodles. But count the fingers. Watch their position. Each one means something. A hand pointing upward signals heaven, aspiration. A hand pointing downward signals earth, grounding. A hand with 3 fingers folded is a triad, an oath. A hand with all fingers spread warns of danger, of openness too wide. The Vatican preserves icons where Christ's hand forms letters. The Greek ICXC Jesus Christ can be traced in the fingers. To the faithful, it is blessing. To the initiated, it is code. A name written in gesture, hidden in plain sight. Why use hands as code? Because gesture is universal. Words change, alphabets shift, but the human hand remains. A gesture can be understood across tongues, across centuries. It can pass meaning silently, without risk of ink or voice. To raise a hand in a certain way is to speak without speaking, to write without letters. Hands in blessing also carried numbers. 2 fingers raised, 3 folded, 5 visible. Count them. The number itself is message. 2 for duality, 3 for unity, 5 for wounds, 7 for perfection. Each hand is both prayer and cipher, blessing and code. In frescoes, rows of saints raise their hands. Look carefully. Not all gestures match. One saint may hold 2 fingers high, another 3, another a closed fist. These variations are deliberate, a sequence of codes embedded in devotion. Together, they form a system of meaning, silent yet precise. Pilgrims may pass these images daily, receiving only blessing, but those who knew counted fingers, traced shapes, read the language of hands. The gesture became a second text, one spoken in silence, one written in body, one understood only by the attentive. When you see a hand raised in blessing, ask, how many fingers, which direction, what shape? Do not stop at devotion, look for code. Remember that the hand is both tool and text. Its gesture can bless, warn, count, signal. It is not only symbol but cipher. The hands in blessing remind us that code need not be hidden in ink or stone alone. It can live in the body, in movement, in gesture. It can speak without sound, write without page. In the Vatican's halls, painted hands still lift, still bless, still signal. They whisper to those who watch carefully. The code is here, in the fingers, in the silence, in the blessing itself. Look at the ceilings of the old basilicas. Among the gold mosaics and painted saints, tiny stars gleam. They are arranged in circles, arcs, and spirals. At first, they seem decorative little dots to remind you of heaven. But they are more than decoration. They are a compass, a code hidden in the night sky and placed above worshippers to guide them without words. The ancients saw time in the stars. The 7 wandering lights, the sun, moon, and 5 planets were the hands of a cosmic clock. To mark them in ceilings and margins was not simply to decorate, but to encode a calendar. 7 stars arranged in a ring could tell the reader which psalms belonged to which day. 12 stars drawn into a square could map the months. 33 stars, carefully counted, could whisper the age of Christ. In some manuscripts, tiny stars appear beside passages about light. They are drawn as 6-pointed shapes or small dots. At first, they look like embellishment, but count them. The number is never random. 9 stars beside one verse, 3 beside another, 7 spread through a prayer. Each sequence maps a pattern. Some align with the days of a feast. Others mirror constellations visible on certain nights. The book becomes a sky in miniature. The Vatican preserves painted ceilings where star patterns match actual constellations. Orion stretches across a chapel vault, though no one names him aloud. The Pleiades cluster in a mosaic, their 7 sisters glowing faintly. To worshippers, they were heaven itself. To those who counted, they were signals, dates, cycles, times when certain rituals aligned with cosmic rhythm. Why hide code in stars? Because stars are universal. No authority can erase them. No council can ban their rising. By painting them into stone and ink, scribes and builders preserved knowledge beyond suppression. The star compass was map, calendar, and code all at once. Imagine a monk tracing 7 stars around a capital letter. He is not only drawing beauty, he is fixing memory. The reader who counts sees, this prayer belongs to Saturn's day, or this chant must be sung when the moon is new. The stars speak silently, guiding practice with no need for words. In cathedrals, rose windows often mirrored the star compass. Circles of glass divided into 12, 24, 36 parts. Light itself moved through them, turning the building into a clock of heaven. Pilgrims might gaze at the colours, but those who measured saw the code: time, motion, order of stars written into stone. The star compass teaches that direction is not only north or south, but inward and upward. To follow the stars in books and churches was to orient the soul, to know when to act, when to wait, when to pray. The stars encoded time, but also trust. They reminded the reader that order exists beyond chaos, that cycles repeat, that light returns. When you see stars in margins or ceilings, count them. Ask what numbers they form, what constellations they echo, what cycles they hide. Remember, every dot of light is a signal. The compass waits not in heaven alone, but in books, walls, and windows. It is always there, whispering directions to those who see. Along the edges of certain manuscripts, lines curl and twist. At first, they look like vines or ribbons, but follow them closely. They coil back on themselves, loop in circles, fork at sharp angles. They move like living creatures. These are serpent lines drawn not for decoration but as code. The serpent has always been symbol and cipher. In one moment it is danger, in another wisdom, in another eternity itself, eating its tail in endless return. To draw a serpent line in a book was to speak of cycles, of hidden wisdom, of truths too dangerous for plain words. Some serpent lines end in heads, tiny eyes and tongues flicking from the margin. Others end in tails, curling into knots. In both cases, they are not random. A serpent biting its tail signals eternity. A serpent with 7 coils signals the planets. A serpent crossing itself 3 times signals the Trinity hidden in shadow. In certain psalters, serpent lines slither across pages, connecting distant passages. One phrase in a psalm is linked by a curling line to another phrase pages later. The serpent shows the reader where meaning hides, how one text echoes another. Without it, the link would be invisible. With it, the code is revealed. The Vatican holds manuscripts where serpents twine through initials. At first, they seem playful, but when counted, each coil matches a feast, each loop a day. The serpent is calendar, compass, path. To trace it is to follow instruction silently hidden in decoration. In architecture, serpent lines appear in mosaics and carvings. Floors ripple with wave-like patterns, but careful eyes see coiling bodies. Some end in dragon heads, others in knots. To the pilgrim walking across them, they are simply beautiful designs. To the initiate, they are maps of power, warnings of cycles, paths of return. Why serpents? Because they embody both fear and reverence. A serpent is never ignored. It commands attention, yet it can slip into art unnoticed. It is perfect code, visible to all, meaningful only to some. The serpent line often guards knowledge. In some manuscripts, it surrounds a passage, coiling around it like protection. The message inside is dangerous, so the serpent keeps it safe, visible only to those who dare to look within. In others, the serpent connects texts like veins, carrying hidden lifeblood across the page. To read a serpent line is to walk a path. Your eye follows its curve, your mind traces its loops, your memory holds its numbers. It is not only drawing but journey, instruction given through motion. When you see a curling line in a margin, resist dismissing it as art. Count its loops. Note its start and end. Ask what it surrounds, what it connects. The serpent whispers of cycles, of returns, of paths hidden in plain sight. Its line is both danger and guidance, silence and code. The serpent reminds us that meaning does not move in straight paths. It coils, it circles, it returns. What seems forgotten reappears. What seems lost is hidden. To trace the serpent line is to accept that truth comes in spirals, not in lines, and in those spirals lies the code of eternity. Every manuscript tells two stories, one in words, one in silence. You see the words clearly, black on pale skin, but beneath them lies something else, the veil of ink. Tiny differences in thickness, in colour, in spacing, marks that at first seem careless, but in truth are deliberate. This veil is code, written not in what is said, but in how it is written. Scribes chose their inks carefully. Black for main text, red for headings, gold for sanctity. But sometimes, within the same colour, slight shifts appear. One letter darker than its neighbours. One word written more thickly. A pause between lines longer than usual. These variations are not accidents. They are signals, marks of emphasis, warnings, codes. In certain Bibles, the veil of ink hides entire second texts. Look closely, and you will see that the first letter of every line is drawn darker. String them together, and they spell a message, a name, a date, a phrase. The code runs silently beneath the surface, visible only to the one who looks with patience. The Vatican preserves books where ink changes colour mid-sentence. To the untrained, it looks like fading. To the trained, it is deliberate. Black shifts to brown at a crucial phrase, marking it as central, or red appears only once in a page, signalling a hidden calendar. The veil of ink whispers silently, a message only to those who notice. In some manuscripts, scribes used invisible inks made from lemon or milk. These could not be seen unless warmed. A reader with fire could coax words from blank space, words invisible to anyone else. This was code at its most daring. A book that spoke openly in one voice, secretly in another. Even when no secret ink was used, the veil lived in spacing. Wide gaps between words marked division. Narrow gaps marked connection. Some scribes placed extra space only before certain letters, forming hidden acrostics. To the inattentive, it was careless spacing. To the initiate, it was signal. Why hide meaning in ink? Because ink is the lifeblood of the book. It cannot be erased without damage. It cannot be altered without detection. To place code in ink is to ensure it endures as long as the text itself. The veil is invisible to the careless, indelible to the careful. The veil of ink is a reminder that surface is never the whole. Every word you see carries not only meaning but weight, shade, rhythm. Look at the differences. Ask why here, why now. Count the darker letters, trace the colours, read the spaces. When you hold a manuscript, tilt it. Let the light reveal the layers of ink. Notice the faint gloss, the subtle shifts, the differences between lines. Remember that the veil is there, always, waiting. Behind the words lies a second text, written not in letters, but in presence and absence, in darkness and light. The veil of ink is silence turned into script. It is a code that does not shout, does not speak, but waits quietly for those who will see. To read it is to pierce the surface, to recognize that every book is more than one book, every word more than one meaning. The veil whispers always, look deeper. In the margins of some manuscripts, you find circles perfect, faint, unadorned. They look simple, almost careless, as though a scribe idly pressed his compass into the page. But those circles are not accidents. They are symbols, codes that whisper without words. They are circles of silence, boundaries drawn not only on parchment but within thought itself. The circle is the oldest mark, older than letters, older than words. It means wholeness, completion, eternity. But in these texts, the circle means something more. It is a signal. Pause here. Look closer. The space inside is sacred. The circle marks what cannot be written. In certain psalters, circles surround single words: God, light, truth. Why circle only these? Because they were not meant to be read like other words. They were meant to be seen, to be entered, to be meditated upon. The circle says, this word contains more than letters. This word is infinite. Do not pass over it quickly. Sometimes the circle holds nothing at all, a blank space ringed by ink. At first it seems meaningless, but the blank is not empty. It is silence preserved on parchment, a reminder that some truths cannot be spoken. A circle of silence is a code of absence, telling the reader, what belongs here is known, but it cannot be written. The Vatican holds manuscripts where circles repeat in patterns: 7 circles on one page, 12 on another, 33 on another. They count feasts, months, years. They are calendars disguised as geometry, circles mapping time across pages. To those who do not count, they are decoration. To those who do, they are rhythm, instruction, code. In churches, circles appear in architecture: round windows, round pavements, round chapels. They are not only aesthetic, they are maps of heaven, echoes of eternity built into stone. To walk through them is to move through a silent code, one that guides without speech. Why circles? Because a circle hides nothing, yet reveals everything. It is the simplest shape, yet it carries infinite depth. To draw a circle is to draw unity. To place it on a page is to say, here lies more than you can write. Scribes trusted circles when words would not do. To place a circle was to preserve what could not be erased. Even if the text was scraped away, the circle remained, faint but enduring. It spoke of silence, of eternity, of codes too dangerous for letters. When you see a circle, do not ignore it. Count them, note what they surround. Ask why this word, why this space, why this number. The circle is never idle. It is silence turned visible, eternity pressed into ink. It is a code that does not shout, but waits, still and patient, for those who will pause long enough to listen. The circle of silence is not emptiness. It is fullness beyond speech. To read it is to accept that some truths lie not in words, but in the spaces they guard. And that silence, too, can be code. In the shadows of manuscripts, faint lines climb upward, drawn like stairs. Sometimes they appear in margins, sometimes in miniatures, sometimes hidden in the way letters are arranged. They are ladders, symbols of ascent, codes of movement between earth and heaven. To see them is to understand. This book is not only for reading, it is for climbing. The ladder has always meant passage. In visions, ladders connect worlds. In texts, they signal prayer rising, knowledge descending. A ladder drawn in a margin is not ornament. It is instruction. Ascend thought by thought, word by word. Each rung is a step, each step a stage of meaning. In certain psalters, ladder patterns appear in the initials themselves. The letter L, stretched long, becomes a staircase. Each line of text is set just slightly higher, forming invisible steps across the page. To the casual eye, it is layout. To the careful, it is ladder. To trace it is to climb. The Vatican holds manuscripts where ladders were drawn faintly, then erased, yet their ghosts remain. 5 steps, 7 steps, 12 steps, each number matters. 5 for the senses, 7 for planets, 12 for apostles. The ladder was calendar and cosmos, hidden in geometry. In churches, ladders appear in frescoes. Angels move up and down, carrying souls, carrying light. But to those who counted, the ladders marked time. 12 rungs for months, 24 for hours, 33 for Christ's years. The fresco was not only image but clock, a ladder of time disguised as story. Why ladders? Because the idea of ascent is universal. Every soul longs to climb, to rise, to reach beyond. To draw a ladder was to remind the reader, do not stay here, move upward. Knowledge has levels, truth has heights. The ladder is also a code of relation. To place two words on the same rung is to bind them. To place one above the other is to show hierarchy. In some texts, names appear on different steps. To the unknowing, it is spacing. To the trained, it is map. This name above, that below, this one ascending, that one falling. The ladder of light was not always vertical. In some manuscripts, it stretches sideways, rungs across a page. The reader traces them as they read, climbing not upward but forward, step by step into meaning. When you see lines like stairs, do not pass over them. Count the steps. Ask what they join, what they divide, what they measure. Remember that the ladder is both path and code. It says rise, but also count. Climb, but also read. The ladder of light is not only symbol of heaven, it is a cipher of knowledge, a map of order, a code of ascent. It teaches truth is reached step by step, rung by rung, and each rung is not only passage but meaning, waiting to be seen by those who know how to climb. In some manuscripts, a word is cut, not erased, not corrected cut, a syllable missing, a letter dropped, a phrase broken in half across two lines. At first, it looks like error, clumsy hand, or poor parchment. But again and again, the breaks appear in the same places, on the same words. These are not mistakes, they are codes. The broken word is silence, written in fragments. A broken word says more than a full one. It says, this meaning is dangerous. Do not write it whole. Break it, scatter it, hide it. The trained reader knows to gather the pieces, to join them silently in the mind. The untrained sees only fragments and passes on. In psalters, sacred names are often broken. God's name split across syllables, scattered across lines. To the faithful, it is reverence too holy to write whole. To the initiated, it is code letters, broken to protect, to signal, to hide. The broken word marks power, truth, withheld in part, but never lost. The Vatican holds manuscripts where every third page contains a broken word. Scholars discovered these breaks are not random. They fall on words of light, of truth, of time. The code is deliberate. Count the broken words, and you find patterns. 7, 12, 33. Numbers of cycles, hidden in absence. In some texts, words are broken to form acrostics. Half a word on one line, half on another, the first letters spelling a hidden phrase. To the casual reader, it is poor writing. To the careful, it is second text. The broken word becomes doorway to meaning unseen. Architecture, too, carries this code. Inscriptions cut across stones, broken by columns or arches. The words are legible, but fractured. To read them is to walk, to move from one piece to another, to reassemble truth. The pilgrim participates in the code simply by reading. Why break words? Because silence is safer than speech. To leave a word whole is to risk accusation. To fracture it is to hide it. Only the one who joins pieces will understand. The broken word is shield, protection, code in absence. To read a broken word is to accept incompleteness. You must supply what is missing. You must trust that absence is part of the meaning. The gap itself is sacred. When you see a word cut across lines, do not dismiss it as error. Ask why here, why now. Count the breaks, gather the pieces. Remember that the fracture is not flaw, it is code. The broken word whispers that meaning is never whole on the page. It must be assembled, joined, remembered. It reminds us that silence can speak, that absence is deliberate, that truth sometimes survives not by being spoken, but by being fractured. In manuscripts illuminated with care, the eye is first drawn to colour. Blue for heaven, red for blood, green for life. But look more closely, and you will see lines of gold. Sometimes they form borders, sometimes initials, sometimes faint threads winding through decoration. These lines are not merely beautiful, they are veins of gold carrying a code hidden in light itself. Gold was costly, rare, and difficult to apply. It had to be hammered into leaf, pressed onto glue, burnished to shine. No scribe wasted it. When gold appears, it means something. The choice of where to lay it is always deliberate. A single golden line in a sea of ink is a signal. Here lies power, here lies meaning, here lies code. In psalters preserved in the Vatican, certain psalms are marked not with words but with gold veins running through letters. They glint under light, invisible in shadow. The reader must turn the page, shift their body, catch the angle. Then the gold awakens. This is not decoration, it is initiation. Only those who linger, only those who move with patience will see the message. Sometimes the gold veins form patterns, 7 rays bursting from a single letter, 12 dots scattered through a border, 33 flecks hidden in an image. Each number is deliberate, a silent calendar disguised as beauty. The page becomes a star map, the gold its constellations. In certain manuscripts, the gold was placed not on sacred names, but on seemingly ordinary words. A stone, a gate, a light. But those words, when traced across the book, form a chain. The gold connects them, one to the next, until a hidden story emerges. The text says one thing, the gold whispers another. Architecture holds the same code. Mosaics shimmer with gold tesserae. Some gleam brighter, placed at calculated angles. To the pilgrim, they are background light. To the initiate, they are signals, forming lines across domes and apses, pointing toward constellations, feasts, or sacred numbers. The church becomes a sky turned inside out, the gold its guiding stars. Why gold? Because light itself cannot be erased. Ink fades, pigment dulls, but gold endures. It shines centuries later, carrying its code across time. To hide meaning in gold was to guarantee survival, a message wrapped in light. The veins of gold were also protection. A page with gold could not be destroyed casually. Too much wealth was invested. The code was safe, shielded by beauty, preserved by cost. Gold became the safest mask of all. When you see gold in a manuscript, do not admire only its glow. Count it, trace its placement. Ask why this word, this letter, this number. Turn the page, shift the angle, let the light speak. Remember that gold is not simply adornment, it is code made visible only to those willing to look beyond ink. The veins of gold are messages disguised as beauty, codes hidden in shine. They teach that truth can be preserved not in secrecy but in brilliance. What glitters is not distraction. It is direction, a light guiding you toward what words alone could never say. In margins of manuscripts, beasts prowl. Lions with human eyes, birds with too many wings, fish coiling into knots. At first, they seem like play scribes, amusing themselves in long hours of copying. But the animals are not idle, they are code, each one chosen, each one placed, each one whispering meaning. A lion in a psalter is not just courage. It may mark the Gospel of Mark, or signal the rising of Leo in the stars. A fish drawn sideways may be Christ, or may be Pisces, guiding the reader to a date in the zodiac. An owl perched in a corner may not be wisdom, but warning, a sign of death or night. Every animal has double meaning. The Vatican holds bestiaries, books of animals with moral lessons. But beyond the lessons, these books were codes. The placement of animals mirrored calendars. 12 beasts for months, 4 for seasons, 7 for planets. To the casual reader, they were tales. To the trained, they were maps. In manuscripts, animals often point with paws, wings, or tails. They are not random. They guide the eye to hidden words, to dangerous lines, to truths that needed protection. A dragon's tail may curl around a phrase of power. A bird's beak may touch a word of danger. The animal is marker, not ornament. Animals also carried numbers. 7 geese in a border for 7 virtues, 12 sheep for apostles, 33 fish for Christ's years. To count them is to unlock the code. To ignore them is to miss the message. In churches, animals climb stone. Gargoyles leer from heights, but their numbers are precise. 9 on one side, 9 on another 18, the number of life in Hebrew. Carvings of serpents, eagles, bulls, repeat in patterns, marking cycles, feasts, warnings. The animals are not only guardians but guides, silent codes in flesh of stone. Why animals? Because they are memory. People remember beasts more than numbers. To cloak meaning in lion or lamb was to preserve it in story, safe from erasure. Even if words were banned, the beasts remained, carrying their code forward. The hidden animals remind us that truth is not always written in letters. Sometimes it walks on paws, soars on wings, swims in silence. To see them is to ask, why this beast? Why here? Why now? Count them, trace them, follow their gaze. The animals speak quietly, but their language is old, older than ink, older than stone. The code of animals is not childish play. It is wisdom disguised as story, guidance hidden in image. The beasts prowl still in margins and walls, waiting for eyes that will read their silent language. In every manuscript, numbers appear, page counts, chapter marks, verses. They seem practical, neutral, necessary. But many numbers are not what they seem. They are shadows, codes hidden behind digits, messages wrapped in arithmetic. To read them is to enter a second text, one written not in letters but in numbers. Shadow numbers often appear in margins. A faint X-ive beside a psalm, though no chapter needs it. A V-in repeated where it does not belong. These are not errors, they are signals. 12 for months, 7 for planets, cycles marked silently in numbers. The Vatican preserves manuscripts where numbers align perfectly with hidden patterns. 33 psalms marked in gold, echoing Christ's years. 40 days repeated across prayers, echoing desert and fasting. 72 lines in a hymn, matching the number of nations in ancient reckoning. Each number is deliberate, chosen for meaning, not necessity. In architecture, numbers hide in proportions. Churches built in ratios of 3, 4, 5, echoing Pythagoras. Domes divided into 12 sections, altars raised on 7 steps. The pilgrim sees beauty, balance. The initiate sees numbers, codes of harmony, silent truths written in measure. Shadow numbers also appear in repetition. A phrase spoken 3 times, a word written 7 times, a symbol repeated 12 times. To the inattentive, it is style. To the trained, it is code, numbers speaking through rhythm. Why numbers? Because numbers are universal. They cross language, culture, time. A word can be mistranslated. A number cannot. To hide meaning in numbers was to preserve it across centuries, unbroken by tongue or script. Shadow numbers were shields too. A page with dangerous content might survive if its numbers carried code. The text could be altered, censored, rewritten. But the numbers remained, pointing quietly toward what was lost. They were anchors in silence, ciphers of survival. When you see numbers in margins, do not skip them. Count them, trace them, compare them. Ask why 12 here, 7 there, 33 repeated. Remember that every number is choice. Every repetition is signal. The shadow numbers whisper always. They say, Meaning is not only in letters, it is in counts, in measures, in rhythms. To read them is to see a second book inside the first, a book that cannot be erased, a code that survives in digits even when words are gone. The shadow numbers remind us that truth endures, not only in story, but in measure. Every cycle, every repetition, every count is a voice. And that voice speaks still, waiting for those who will listen not to words, but to numbers hidden in shadow. In the centre of some manuscripts, hidden in margins or pressed faintly into parchment, you will find a compass rose. Sometimes it is no larger than a coin, drawn with delicate points radiating outward. Sometimes it spreads boldly, with 8 or 16 arms, each ending in an arrow or a star. At first glance, it seems like a navigational tool, a decoration for a scribe's idle hand. But the compass rose is no mere ornament. It is code, direction, orientation, instruction, whispered through shape. The rose marks the world, but it also marks the page. To draw it in a manuscript is to orient the reader, to signal north is not only above, it is inward. South is not only below, it is descent. East and west are not just horizons, but beginnings and endings. The compass rose was a guide for thought, a way to move through meaning as one might move through land. In Psalters, compass roses appear faintly beside prayers of journey. They tell the reader, this prayer belongs to the road, to the pilgrim, to the path ahead. The points of the rose are not random. 4 for seasons, 7 for planets, 12 for tribes. To the trained eye, each point is a code. To the untrained, it is simply decoration. The Vatican preserves manuscripts where compass roses are drawn with golden ink. Their points align with specific letters, spelling words only when traced in sequence. The rose becomes a cipher wheel, a hidden alphabet of direction. To follow its arms is to uncover names, feasts, secrets. The text speaks plainly. The rose whispers otherwise. In cathedrals, compass roses mark floors. Pilgrims walked across them without noticing. But those who counted steps knew, stand at the north point and you face the altar of resurrection. Stand at the east and you face the rising of light. The rose beneath your feet was not only design, it was map, guiding body and soul together. Why use the compass rose as code? Because orientation matters. A book is not just words, but directions, where to begin, where to pause, where to turn. To place a rose was to guide without telling, to lead without speaking. It gave silent instruction. Look east for hope, west for ending, north for truth, south for descent. The compass rose also hid calendars, 16 points for half months, 32 for days in cycles, points aligned with lunar phases. To the pilgrim, it was art. To the initiate, it was time kept in geometry. When you see a compass rose, count its points. Ask why this number, why this shape, why this place. Trace the lines with your eye. See what words they connect, what letters they touch. The rose is never idle. It is orientation in disguise, compass turned cipher. The compass rose teaches that truth has directions. It is not only up or down, but east and west, inward and outward. To follow the rose is to accept that knowledge is journey, meaning is navigation, and every page is a map waiting to be read. Scattered through manuscripts, you sometimes find drawings of keys, small, delicate, often hidden in margins, sometimes forming patterns at the bottom of pages. To the casual reader, they are playful sketches. To the careful, they are signals. The chain of keys is code, each key unlocking meaning hidden beneath the surface. The key has always meant access, passage, power. To hold a key is to control doors. To draw a key is to whisper. Something here is locked, but not forever. The chain of keys is not decoration. It is a system of permission, silent guidance for those who knew how to follow. In Psalters, Keys appear beside dangerous words light, time, truth. A tiny key signals. This passage is more than devotion. It opens into hidden teaching. The Vatican holds manuscripts where keys appear in groups 3, 7, 12. Each group matches cycles, Trinity, planets, tribes. The numbers matter more than the drawings. Sometimes the keys themselves form chains across pages. One key in a margin points to another 2 pages later. That one points to a third. Together, they form a hidden sequence. To trace them is to follow a secret commentary, a path through the book invisible to casual readers. The text is one thing. The chain of keys is another. In architecture, keys appear in carvings, often held by saints. But their numbers are deliberate. 2 keys crossed for authority, 3 for hidden triads, 7 for planetary cycles. The chain of keys was not only symbol of the church, but of code, power hidden in sequence. Why use keys as code? Because a key is both symbol and promise. It can be shown openly without suspicion, yet it always whispers of hidden things. To draw a key is to declare, this is locked. To draw a chain is to declare, follow, and you will open what others cannot. The chain of keys also acted as protection. If a text was accused of heresy, the drawings could be dismissed as ornament. Only those who knew saw them as instruction, each key pointing toward passages meant to be read in silence. When you see a key in a margin, do not dismiss it. Count them. Trace their sequence. Ask where they lead, what they guard. Remember that keys always mean more than doors. They mean thresholds, transitions, hidden chambers. The chain of keys reminds us that truth is often locked, but never beyond reach. The drawings whisper, you may enter, but only if you follow. The text may appear closed, but the keys wait patiently, linking meaning across silence, unlocking what cannot be spoken outright. Every manuscript is a building. Pages are walls, margins are halls, words are rooms. To read is to enter, to walk, to wander. And within many manuscripts there is a door, sometimes drawn faintly, sometimes suggested in geometry, sometimes hidden in the structure itself. It is not a literal door, but a symbol, a code. The hidden door whispers, there is more here, beyond the surface. Step through. The hidden door often appears in architecture of text. A column of words narrows, then widens, forming an arch. At first, it looks like accident of layout, but if you trace it, you see a doorway. To pass through is to read differently, to enter hidden meaning. In Psalters, doors are drawn in margins, simple arches, faintly inked. Sometimes they hold no decoration at all. Sometimes they bear tiny locks, or hinges, or steps. The Vatican preserves manuscripts where these doors always appear before dangerous passages, signalling to the reader, what follows is threshold, not surface. The hidden door also appears in geometry. Circles intersect to form vesica-shaped ovals like pointed arches. To the unknowing, they are decoration. To the trained, they are doors, symbols of passage from one state to another, one world to another. In churches, hidden doors were real as well as symbolic. Walls concealed small chambers, secret passageways, known only to few. But even these were codes in stone, teaching the pilgrim that knowledge is layered, truth is hidden, passage requires permission. The architecture and the manuscripts spoke the same language. Doorways within doorways. Why doors? Because every threshold teaches. To pass through is to change. To remain outside is to stay the same. A hidden door in a text says, meaning lies deeper. Only those who see the door, only those who choose to step through, will know. The hidden door also reminds that truth is choice. A door may stand open, yet not all will enter. A code may be visible, yet not all will read. The door waits, silent, unassuming, until someone recognizes it. Then it becomes passage. When you see narrowing lines, arches drawn, vesica shapes, do not dismiss them. Ask why here, why now? Ask what lies beyond. Trust that the hidden door is not accident. It is invitation. It whispers, come further, leave the surface, step through. The hidden door is the final code, the culmination of all others. Circles, ladders, animals, numbers, gold, keys, all lead here. Each prepares the reader to see not just pages but thresholds. Each trains the eye to recognize passage. The hidden door teaches that truth is always beyond, never on the surface. It waits behind the veil, behind the code, behind the silence. To see it is to be called. To step through is to be changed. And so the manuscripts whisper still, not only in words, not only in images, but in thresholds drawn faintly across pages. They remind us that every book is not just story but building, not just ink but door. The key is attention. The act is choice. The door is always there, waiting for those who will see it and step through. There are pages where vines creep through the margins. Flowers unfurl, leaves curl delicately, fruit dangles heavy. At first it seems only decoration, a scribe filling space with beauty, but look closely. The vines form patterns, the flowers repeat in numbers, the fruits cluster deliberately. These are not idle ornaments. They are gardens in miniature, codes of growth, of time, of hidden wisdom. The secret garden was not drawn to charm the eye. It was planted to guide the soul. Each plant chosen was a symbol, the lily for purity, the rose for secrecy, the vine for eternity. In some manuscripts, the plants mirror the seasons, budding blossoms in spring psalms, ripe fruit in summer hymns, bare branches in laments of winter. The book becomes a calendar of nature, a garden that blooms across its pages. In Vatican manuscripts, certain plants appear only in margins beside dangerous words, truth, wisdom, light. A scribe who could not write openly would instead draw leaves curling around the forbidden. To those who knew, the message was clear. Here lies more than devotion. Here lies seed of knowledge. Sometimes the garden held numbers. 3 roses for Trinity, 7 leaves for planets, 12 fruits for months. To count was to read. The garden became more than art. It became measure, cycle, hidden text. Architecture echoed the same code. Cloisters bloomed with gardens carefully arranged. 4 paths for seasons, 12 beds for months, fountains at the centre for eternity. These gardens were not merely for rest. They were maps, codes in living green, patterns of creation written in earth. Why gardens? Because growth itself is code. A seed becomes stem, stem becomes flower, flower becomes fruit. This cycle mirrors time, mirrors spirit. To draw gardens in books was to remind truth grows, wisdom blossoms, silence bears fruit. The secret garden was also protection. Flowers seemed harmless, vines seemed playful. No authority could accuse a scribe of treason for drawing leaves. Yet those leaves carried signals, whispered codes, disguised as beauty. When you see vines curling in a margin, count them. When you see flowers blooming in initials, ask why this plant, why this number. Do not dismiss them as idle art. The garden is never idle. It is planted with intention, cultivated with care, watered with silence. The secret garden teaches that truth grows quietly. It does not shout, it blooms in silence, blossoms in hidden corners, waits in margins for those who will notice. The page is not dead skin, it is soil, and every flower drawn upon it is seed, code, garden waiting to be read. Some manuscripts seem ordinary until you notice that the words repeat. A phrase appears twice in a line, reversed. A sentence mirrors itself across a page. The letters reflect, turning left to right, right to left. These are not errors. They are mirrors' words turned into reflections, texts folded back on themselves. The mirror of words was a code of doubling. To reflect was to remind truth is not only forward, but backward, not only surface, but depth. In mirrored writing, meaning hides behind appearance. A phrase may read devotion one way, but reversed, it spells a name. A prayer may seem ordinary until mirrored letters reveal a date. In psalters, mirrors appear in initials. A large A is drawn, then reversed, facing itself. Between the two, vines curl, forming a gate. To the unknowing, it is art. To the trained, it is code, a threshold marked by mirror. The Vatican preserves manuscripts where entire passages are written backward. At first glance, they look unreadable, but to the reader, with patience, or with a mirror of polished metal, they reveal hidden prayers, forbidden hymns, secret texts. The reflection itself was part of the code. Only those who carried a mirror, or who could read with eyes trained in reversal, could see the meaning. Architecture mirrored the same code. Twin arches, twin towers, twin windows reflected across facades. Cathedrals built with perfect symmetry were not only beautiful but instructive. They whispered that creation is reflection, heaven mirrored on earth, eternity reflected in time. Why mirrors? Because reflection is safety. To write openly is to risk accusation. To mirror words is to hide them. Only the trained can read. The untrained see only nonsense. The mirror protects meaning by reversing it, folding it, doubling it. Mirrored writing also carried numbers. A phrase reflected once meant 2, reflected twice meant 4. In some manuscripts, mirrors repeat 7 times, or 12, or 33. Each repetition counts. Each reflection signals cycle. When you see doubled words, reversed letters, symmetrical lines, do not dismiss them as mistake. Ask why here, why now. Hold them to the light. Place them before glass. Remember that the mirror is both surface and depth, both concealment and revelation. The mirror of words teaches that truth has 2 faces, one for the surface, one for those who reflect. To read it is to see both, to hold both, to know that reality itself is mirror. What is above reflects what is below. What is without mirrors what is within. In the margins of manuscripts, faint lines appear, sometimes dots, sometimes strokes, sometimes curves like waves. To the untrained, they are decoration. To the trained, they are music. But not ordinary music. Silent music melodies written in marks that were never meant to be sung aloud, codes carried in rhythm and silence. Silent music was a way to preserve meaning in sound without sound. Notes marked passages, not for singing but for memory. A dot above a word might mean emphasis, a pause, a rhythm of thought. To read it was to hear it, not with ears but with mind. In psalters, these marks guide prayer. A chant flows differently depending on dots. A phrase rises or falls in rhythm unseen by those outside. To the initiated, the silent music was second text, a melody hidden beneath words, carrying codes of timing, of cycles, of meaning. The Vatican preserves antiphonaries, where silent notes appear only on certain lines. They form patterns, 7 notes, 12 notes, 33 notes, each number deliberate, each rhythm coded. The text says devotion. The music whispers cycles, feasts, cosmic order. In architecture, silent music became geometry, windows spaced like measures, columns placed like rhythms, arches echoing intervals. To walk through a cathedral was to move through song-made stone. The pilgrim's steps became notes, the building itself a score. The silence was music, the architecture melody. Why silent music? Because sound vanishes. Words can be erased, but rhythm, number, pattern endure. To hide meaning in silent marks was to preserve it across centuries, unbroken by tongue or time. Only those who knew how to count, how to feel rhythm, could read the melody. Silent music also acted as shield. A book filled with dots could not be accused of heresy. It was only notation. But to those who knew, it was map, guide, code. Each mark pointed. each rhythm instructed. When you see dots above words, lines in margins, curves like waves, do not dismiss them. Count them, trace them, ask what rhythm they form, what number they whisper. Remember that music is not only sound, it is pattern, and patterns carry meaning beyond speech. Silent music teaches that truth has rhythm. It is not only spoken but felt, not only written but pulsed. To read it is to hear silence sing, to know that beneath every word lies melody, and beneath every melody lies code. The silent music whispers still in margins and walls, in dots and arches, in rhythms of prayer and silence. It reminds us that creation itself is music, that time is measure, that truth sings even when no voice is raised. To read it is to join the song, to step into rhythm, to hear silence itself speak. In the corner of some manuscripts, a round disc appears. Sometimes it is painted gold, sometimes left blank, sometimes marked with rays. At first it seems to be the sun obvious, bright, harmless. But this is not an ordinary Sunday. It is cloaked, veiled with silence. Its rays are numbers, its circle a calendar, its light a code. The cloaked sun is more than ornament. Each ray carries meaning. 12 rays for months, 24 for hours, 33 for years of Christ. In some manuscripts, the rays are uneven. Count them, 7 on one side, 9 on another. These numbers are not random. They whisper of planets, of feasts, of cycles hidden behind the image of the Sunday. In Psalters, the cloaked sun appears beside words of light. A golden disk sits above illumination. A shining orb decorates truth. To the unknowing, it is illustration. To the trained, it is code. The sun tells you this passage carries more than words. It holds time, measure, order. The Vatican holds manuscripts where suns appear in sequences, 3 on one page, 4 on another, 7 on the next. Together they form a calendar. Each disc signals a holy day, a hidden feast, a cycle of light. To trace them is to follow a secret rhythm of devotion. Architecture echoes the same code. Domes painted with suns are not only decoration, each beam is counted. In some chapels, 32 beams radiate outward, marking compass points and days. In others, 8 beams form a cross, linking earth to heaven. The sun above is not only symbol of God, but map of time itself. Why cloak the sun? Because light can blind as well as reveal. To draw the sun openly is to risk accusation of astrology, forbidden in certain times. To cloak it as decoration is to protect it. The initiated knew how to count rays, how to read cycles. The untrained saw only art. The cloaked sun also hides in letters. The circle of an O drawn large, filled with gold. The dot of an I expanded into a disc. To others, it is flourish. To the initiate, it is signal. The sun hides here. When you see a circle with rays, pause. Count them. Note their unevenness, their symmetry, their absence. Ask why this number, why this place. The cloaked sun is never idle. It shines in silence, coded in rays, whispering cycles hidden in plain light. The cloaked sun teaches that light itself can be code. Not all illumination is obvious. Sometimes the brightest symbol hides the deepest secret. The sun glows quietly in margins and domes, waiting for those who will count its rays and hear its silent calendar of time. In some manuscripts, lines curl into mazes. They spiral inward, twist outward, form paths with no end. At first they look like games, drawn by idle hands. But the labyrinth is no game. It is code, a map of journey, a guide of silence. The labyrinth teaches that truth is not straight. It coils, it turns, it demands patience. To walk its path is to learn endurance, to find centre slowly. To draw it in a book is to whisper, knowledge lies not on surface, but at heart. Only those who walk the path line by line, will reach it. In Psalters, labyrinths appear in initials, the letter O filled with spirals, the letter Q becoming a maze. To the casual eye, it is ornament. To the trained, it is signal. The reader must pause, trace the lines, follow the journey inward. The path is not distraction, but instruction. The Vatican preserves manuscripts where labyrinths hide numbers. 7 turns for planets, 12 for months, 33 for years. To trace the labyrinth is to move through time itself, to journey across cycles of creation. Each step is a count, each turn a measure. The labyrinth becomes calendar and compass together. Architecture carried the same code. Cathedrals in Chartres and Lucca bear labyrinths carved into floors. Pilgrims walked them slowly, step after step, in place of distant journeys. To the eye, it was devotion. To the initiate, it was code, steps counted, numbers reached, cycles traced beneath the feet. Why labyrinths? Because the path itself is protection. A straight road is easily destroyed. A winding road hides what lies at centre. To place truth at the end of labyrinth is to guard it, to ensure only the patient, the persistent, the attentive arrive. Labyrinths also hide words. Some manuscripts show spirals with letters placed along turns. To read them, you must follow the path. Only then do the words emerge, hidden from those who skim. The labyrinth demands full attention, full journey. When you see spirals in margins, paths curling inward, do not dismiss them. Trace them, count the turns, ask what lies at centre. Remember that labyrinths are not idle play. They are codes of patience, maps of silence, journeys in ink. The shifting labyrinth reminds us that truth is not simple. It is winding, coiled, hidden. To find it requires walking, counting, enduring. The path is the lesson. The centre is the code. In manuscripts, faces appear. Sometimes saints, sometimes angels, sometimes human figures with no names. At first, they seem like portraits, illustrations of stories. But many faces are veiled, half hidden, turned away, masked by shading. These veiled faces are not simple art. They are codes, signals of silence, reminders of hidden presence. The veiled face often appears beside dangerous words, truth, wisdom, light. The figure looks outward, but its eyes are covered, its features blurred. The message is clear. What is written here is not whole. What is hidden cannot be spoken. The face itself is code. In Psalters, veiled faces appear in margins. Sometimes a hood drawn over a figure, sometimes a veil across eyes. To the casual reader, it is style. To the trained, it is warning. The veil says, "Look deeper, but do not speak aloud." The truth is here, but it must remain hidden. The Vatican preserves manuscripts where veiled faces repeat in sequences 3, 7, 12. Each count matters. 3 for Trinity, 7 for planets, 12 for tribes. The faces themselves may differ, but their numbers form the code. In frescoes, veiled faces look down from arches. They seem angels or prophets, but their eyes are shaded, their mouths covered. These images remind the viewer some truths are to be seen, but not spoken, known, but not declared. The veil itself is the message. Why veiled faces? Because presence must sometimes hide. To show openly is to risk destruction. To veil is to preserve. A hidden truth survives where an open one is erased. The face, half shown, carries more power than one displayed fully. The veiled face also signals silence. A mouth covered says, "Speak not." An eye covered says, "Look not too directly." The veil protects both scribe and reader, both teacher and student. It is shield, mask, code. When you see a face in a manuscript, ask, is it whole? Is it turned, shaded, hidden? Count the veiled ones. Note their numbers, their placements. They are never idle. They are warnings, signals, codes of secrecy. The veiled face teaches that truth is not always meant for open display. Some knowledge survives only in silence, masked from those who would destroy it. The veil is not absence, but presence protected, face turned toward those who can see beyond covering. To read the veiled face is to accept that not all can be revealed. Some truths are for the hidden, for the silent, for the attentive. The face waits, half shown, whispering through its covering that knowledge survives best when it is seen only in part, preserved beneath the veil. In old drawings, tucked into the margins of sacred texts, two columns stand side by side. Sometimes they are plain, simple shafts. Other times they are ornate, carved with vines and crowned with capitals of leaves or flames. At first glance, they seem like architectural flourishes, but the twin pillars are not idle sketches. They are signs, codes, markers of passage. The pillars have always meant threshold. To pass between them is to leave one space and enter another. In Scripture, they recall the pillars of cloud and fire that guided through wilderness. In temple law, they recall columns that stood at the entrance of Solomon's house of wisdom. In manuscripts, they whisper, "Here lies a doorway, here lies a division, here lies knowledge guarded." In psalters, twin pillars often appear beside transitions. At the end of one psalm, before the beginning of another, two faint columns rise in the margin. They are not decoration, they are signal. The reader must pass, must pause, must prepare. Between the pillars lies change. The Vatican preserves manuscripts where pillars are drawn in numbers. 2 for threshold, 3 for unity, 7 for perfection. Sometimes the pillars carry letters, initials of hidden names. Sometimes they carry numbers, dates of hidden feasts. The twin columns are not simply structure, they are code, binding text to time. Architecture echoes the same secret. Cathedrals bear two towers at their fronts. They rise not only for balance, but for symbol. The towers mark entrance, declare division, signal threshold. Pilgrims walk between them, stepping from ordinary world into sacred. The pillars, in stone as in ink, whisper of passage. Why two pillars? Because they embody duality, light and dark, heaven and earth, seen and unseen. To place two columns is to declare, knowledge is found in balance, truth stands between opposites. The pillars themselves are not the goal, the space between them island. In some manuscripts, the space between pillars is left blank, empty parchment framed by inked shafts. To the casual eye, wasted space. To the trained, silence of meaning. The emptiness itself is code, a doorway to what cannot be written. When you see two pillars, pause. Count them, measure them, note their height and width. Ask why here, why now. Remember that the pillars are not only drawings. They are signals of thresholds, invitations to pass, guardians of hidden rooms of meaning. The twin pillars teach that every truth has gates. To reach it, you must recognize the entrance, step between opposites, walk through silence. Knowledge waits not only in words, but in thresholds, and the pillars, silent and patient, stand always to mark the way. In some manuscripts, the letters are red, bright against pale parchment, sharp against black ink. At first it seems simple rubrics, headings, instructions. But the red ink is not only for clarity. It is blood script, code of sacrifice, signal of danger, whisper of hidden meaning. The choice of red was deliberate. To the eye, it is striking. To the spirit, it is reminder. Blood spilled, covenant sealed, life given. To write in red was to charge the word with weight. But beyond devotion, red carried code. In psalters, red appears on specific words, light, truth, beginning, end. Not randomly, not for style, but for signal. The Vatican holds manuscripts where red ink falls on names only at intervals. Count them, every 7th name, every 12th phrase. Together they form cycles, calendars, silent rhythms of devotion. Sometimes red appears as initials, the first letter of each line glowing like flame. String them together, and they spell hidden words, acrostics that lie beneath the surface. The casual reader sees beauty. The trained reader sees message. In architecture, the code carried into stone. Frescoes glowed with red pigments reserved for key symbols: fire, wounds, martyrs. Each use deliberate, each placement coded. Red marked not only blood but hidden emphasis. To count red was to uncover secret rhythm. Why red? Because it cannot be ignored. Black fades into text, gold dazzles with light, but red arrests the eye, stops the reader. It says, "Here, now, attend." To write in red was to underline without explanation, to signal meaning without words. The blood script was also protection. Dangerous ideas could be hidden in plain sight. A phrase written in black may be overlooked. A single word in red, placed carefully, becomes memory. Even if the text is altered, the red remains, whispering still of what was meant. When you see red letters, do not pass quickly. Count them, trace them, ask why this word, why this place. Remember that red is never idle. It is code, blood-made ink, silence written in colour. The blood script teaches that meaning is not only in form, but in emphasis. Colour itself can whisper, can mark, can code. The red letters glow still, carrying cycles and secrets across centuries, waiting for eyes willing to follow their trail of fire.